Welcome to Synapse Daily. Today, we step into a ghost. Imagine a city of 100,000 people that, officially, does not exist. It has no name. It has no postal code. It is a blank spot on the map, a secret whispered only in the highest corridors of the Kremlin. In 1962, the Soviet Union expanded one of its most terrifying and impressive engineering feats, Zheleznogorsk. Known then only as Krasnoyarsk 26, this wasn't just a town. It was a fortress carved into the cold, unforgiving granite of the Atamonovsky Mountains in the heart of Siberia. Why did the USSR spend billions to hide an entire civilization underground? The answer lies in the Cold War's insatiable thirst for plutonium. Chapter 1: The Anatomy of the Mountain. To understand the 1962 expansion, we have to talk about the granite. This isn't just rock, it's a shield. The Atamonovsky Mountain wasn't chosen by accident. Soviet geologists spent years surveying the region for a formation that could absorb the shockwaves of a multi-megaton nuclear blast. They needed a place where the production of death could continue even after the end of the world. But carving into this granite was a nightmare. In 1962, the Soviet Union deployed specialized mining equipment that was usually reserved for the Moscow metro. Imagine the scene: thousands of workers, operating in 3 shifts, 24 hours a day. The air inside the tunnels was thick with the smell of diesel, sweat, and pulverized stone. Thousands of cubic meters of rock were removed every single day. Where did the rocks go? This is where the secrecy becomes a form of high art. You cannot simply leave a mountain of debris outside a secret facility. CIA satellites, which by 1962 were becoming increasingly sophisticated with the Corona program, would have spotted the new mountain instantly. Instead, the Soviets practiced total maskirovka. The debris was moved through secondary secret tunnels and dumped into the depths of the Yenisei River under the cover of pitch-black Siberian nights. Some of it was repurposed for railway embankments that led to nowhere, creating a landscape of deception. Chapter 2: The 3 Hearts of the Mountain. The 1962 expansion centered around the 3 hearts, the nuclear reactors AD, and the burgeoning AD-2. By this specific year, the focus was the completion of the ADE reactors infrastructure. This was a dual-purpose masterpiece. It didn't just produce the plutonium-239 needed for Soviet warheads, it was designed to generate the heat and electricity required to keep the underground city alive. Think about the technical challenge for a moment. A nuclear reactor is essentially a colossal heat engine. In a standard facility, you see massive cooling towers or plumes of white steam rising into the sky. But a secret city cannot afford steam. A plume of steam in the middle of a Siberian forest is a target. The Soviet engineers, working under immense pressure from Moscow, designed a cooling system that was as brilliant as it was ecologically devastating. They drew water directly from the Yenisei River through deep, hidden intake pipes buried beneath the riverbed. This water cycled through the mountain, absorbed the terrifying heat of the reactor cores, and was then pumped back into the river. By the winter of 1962, something eerie happened. The Yenisei River, famous for its bone-chilling ice, stopped freezing for miles downstream. Local villagers, those few who lived far enough away to not be part of the secret, saw a steaming, open river in -40-degree weather. They were told it was a natural anomaly. In reality, it was the thermal signature of the Soviet Union's nuclear ambition. Chapter 3: The Invisible Society of 1962. Let's walk the streets of Zheleznogorsk as they existed in 1962. If you were standing on the surface, it looked like a model Soviet town, a socialist utopia. There were neoclassical apartment blocks, manicured parks, and theaters showing the latest state-approved films. But the surface was a shell. The real life of the city happened hundreds of meters below your feet. There were miles of underground roads wide enough for heavy military trucks. There were high-speed elevators, the fastest in the USSR at the time, that took workers from their mundane morning coffee to a high-radiation nuclear laboratory in a matter of seconds. The social hierarchy was fascinating and arguably the most rigid in the world. If you were a physicist in Krasnoyarsk 26, you were what we call a golden ghost. Your life was a paradox. On one hand, you had access to Hungarian ham, French perfumes, German electronics, and fresh fruit in the middle of winter, luxuries that your cousins in Moscow or Leningrad would never even see. You were the elite. On the other hand, you were under 24/7 surveillance by the second main directorate of the KGB. Your mail was opened and read before you saw it. Your phone calls were recorded. You could not leave the city without a signed permit from 3 different departments. If you died in an accident during the 1962 expansion, your death certificate would list a fake location. You were essentially deleted from reality to protect the state's nuclear monopoly. Chapter 4: The 1962 Turning Point and the Human Toll. Why was 1962 the crunch year? We must look at the global stage. October 1962 brought the world to the precipice of total annihilation during the Cuban Missile Crisis. In the Kremlin, the realization was stark: if a hot war started, every surface-level nuclear facility would be vaporized in the first 60 minutes. Zheleznogorsk was their day after insurance policy. The expansion was fast-tracked. The orders were clear: triple the production capacity, regardless of the cost. Safety protocols, already thin, were often ignored. We have reports of emergency maintenance where workers were sent into high radiation zones with nothing but lead aprons and a sense of duty. And then there were the invisible men, the construction battalions. While the scientists lived in relative comfort, the men digging the tunnels lived in barracks that were barely heated. They dealt with mountain sickness, a unique combination of physical exhaustion and the crushing psychological weight of being trapped in a granite box. The expansion of 1962 wasn't just built with concrete and lead, it was built with the health and sanity of thousands of unnamed workers. Chapter 5: The Psychological Fortress. How do you keep a city of 100,000 people from talking? The Soviets used a combination of the carrot and the stick. The carrot was the closed city premium, higher wages and better shops. But the stick was the psychological isolation. By 1962, a generation of children was being born in Zheleznogorsk who had no concept of a normal city. To them, barbed wire, identity checks at every corner, and the constant hum of the mountain's ventilation systems were normal. The city was designed to be a self-contained universe. It had its own dairy farms, its own schools, and its own secret police force. The expansion created a city within a city, a classified layer where even the janitors had high-level security clearances. If you worked in the ADE reactor hall, you didn't know what was happening in the chemical separation plant next door. Information was compartmentalized to the point of absurdity. This was the only way to ensure that if a spy ever did penetrate the mountain, they would only see one piece of the puzzle. Chapter 6: The Legacy of the 1962 Expansion. As we look back from the 21st century, the scale of Zheleznogorsk remains mind-blowing. The tunnels carved in 1962 are still there. The granite still holds the heat of the reactors that produced the fuel for thousands of warheads. This city was the pinnacle of the secret city phenomenon. It represents a time when humanity was willing to move entire civilizations underground for the sake of a weapon. It was a time of incredible scientific achievement, but also a time of profound ethical darkness. How did they keep such a massive expansion secret? How did they manage to hide the movements of thousands of people? The answer is simple: they didn't just build a city, they built a secret and convinced everyone living inside it that their silence was the only thing standing between the Soviet Union and total destruction. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the granite heart of Siberia. Zheleznogorsk remains a closed city to this day, a lingering shadow of a war that never turned hot, but never truly cooled down. Like this video if you learned something new. Comment your thoughts below and subscribe for more fascinating stories.